Welcome to a special edition of Panther News, Sitting with the Superintendent. I'm joined today by Dr. Sara Ahern, our new Superintendent of Schools. Welcome, Dr. Ahern.
Thank you, Catherine. Nice to be here.
It's very nice to have you. So before we begin, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I started as a superintendent July 1st, and I'm really thrilled to be here in Franklin. I'm really enjoying my time getting to know the students and parents and teachers and administrators. I began my career as a high school science teacher. So being here at Franklin High School is something that's really familiar to me, and I'm thrilled to be able to connect with high school students in a variety of different ways. I was also an assistant principal and assistant superintendent prior to coming to Franklin, and I joined here after being assistant superintendent in nearby Holliston for the last 6 years.
Oh.
In terms of my family life, I live in Northborough, and I've got two stepdaughters, one of whom is 12 and one of whom is 14. She just started high school this year.
That's very exciting. Now, can you tell us what prompted you to become a superintendent?
It wasn't really something that I set out to do, but I found myself being really interested in continuing developing leadership skills over the course of my career, and I had different opportunities present themselves. And I think mostly what motivated me to be superintendent at this point is that I had a really good mentor. The superintendent in Holliston was an excellent mentor to me, as well as other people that I really respect and admire. And it is through their support and encouragement that I felt like it would be the right step to do. What I really enjoy about being a leader of a district is that I have the opportunity to work with all sorts of students, whether they're little preschool kiddos or seniors who are graduating from high school. I really welcome the entire learning continuum and the entire learning process. And I enjoy not just working with students of all ages, but also the teachers and the administrators who work with children of all ages. I really enjoy kind of thinking about the whole educational experience, and so that's some of what motivated me to apply to be superintendent. And Franklin seemed like a perfect fit when I was looking for different districts and recognizing that Franklin has so much going for it. Students do really wonderful, great things, but there's also an atmosphere here of wanting to continuously improve. There's a lot of high expectations here, and I really admire and respect that about Franklin and the community.
That's really interesting. Can you tell us some more about maybe some things that you've noticed about the Franklin district, or some of the students and teachers, or just the general environment of what it's like superintending at Franklin?
I think one of the things that I've really felt and really appreciate is how welcoming everybody in Franklin has been. One of the words that people have used to describe the school community is that of an inclusive environment. And I know I have felt very included in a very short period of time coming in, and I really appreciate that. I feel like I belong. And sometimes it takes a while, I think, for you to feel like you belong somewhere, but I think this has allowed me to kind of hit the ground running and really want to roll up my sleeves and work with people here because I have felt so welcomed. And it seems like that's something that other people kind of share and feel as well, and not just me. And that's the type of place that I want to work.
That's great that you feel so welcome here, and we are very welcoming to you here at Panther News. What are some goals you hope to achieve in the upcoming years?
So I think one of the things that's really important to me as superintendent is that I am working with people in the district to achieve kind of collective goals. So it's not just things that I want to work on or things that are important to me personally, but that together we're identifying and working towards things that are important to all of us. So one of the things that I've done over the past 6 months is I've spent some time really getting to know the district. I've been getting out and about into buildings and making observations. I've been reading a lot of reports and looking at a lot of student assessment results. And I've been talking to a lot of people. I've had focus groups of students, parents, community members, and teachers. I've met individually with school committee members and administrators, as well as town officials. And I visited some other area community organizations like the YMCA and the food pantry, among others. And by doing this, I'm really trying to get a sense of everybody's perspective on the district, compare that to what I see and what I read about the district, and then together put together some goals and areas for improvement that we want to work on going forward. While we're doing that, we are still working on some things that I think are that are important now and are going to continue to be important. So we're working as a district on developing really the strongest social and emotional learning curriculum that we can have for all students, preschool through grade 12. These are things like self-management and self-awareness and relationship skills and responsible decision-making. So as a district, we're trying to further the curriculum in that area. We're working on implementing new science standards as well as new digital literacy standards. There's a look at homework across the district. We are also working on making sure that core values drive decision-making and norms of behavior across our schools. And we're also looking to improve in communication. One of the things that I think will be the most tangible outcome there is that we're looking to revamp our website. And so we're in the early stages of the design process currently, but we want to modernize it, make it more mobile-friendly, and give it kind of a more modern look and feel. So communication is also another thing that we're working on. While we continue with those goals moving forward, we're also thinking about kind of putting together a long-term strategy for improvement. But again, it's not necessarily something that I want to do alone. It's something that I'm really trying to recruit others in the process of so that we can achieve our goals going forward.
Nice. You mentioned the homework policy that you're looking into changing, as seeing as this is something that a lot of students or all students have to deal with. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the homework policy is something that the school committee was interested in looking at last spring before I came on board. But after I was hired, I started to participate in some of those conversations. And the Franklin School Committee looking at the homework policy is actually pretty consistent with what's happening in other districts. There's a lot of conversation about homework happening elsewhere as well. And essentially what people want to make sure of is that with all the pressures that students are facing and with increased levels of stress and making sure that students have time to attend to lots of responsibilities, that we're looking at homework and making sure that is essential, as meaningful as it possibly can be, that it is an extension of the learning environment versus something that's done for homework's sake and is not necessarily felt as being meaningful for all students. Or there are, I think, times where students get homework and they don't know how to do it. They don't know what's expected of them, or the homework assignment comes too late for them to actually be able to do it and manage it with some of the other responsibilities they have in their day-to-day lives. So with that, we're looking to make homework more meaningful, more connected to learning objectives, ensuring that students know how to do their homework, that where possible, the homework is personalized for students. So if a student has mastered a particular skill, maybe they get some challenge problems or an extension of their learning versus another student who still needs to work on that particular concept. And overall provide teachers with something of a framework around which to make decisions with respect to homework. We're not looking to dictate what homework looks like, but provide a framework based on what research says is most effective in terms of homework across all grades.
Another change that we know that, or another policy you're sort of looking at, is school start times. Could you tell us some more about that?
Sure. The Franklin School Committee is interested in exploring adjusting school start times. Again, this is one of the topics of conversation that's happening in a lot of communities, and there are other districts that have adjusted school start times. And the foundation of this and the basis of this comes from sleep research and children and adolescents. And what has been shown through the research is that the biological clock of teens and adolescents is actually shifted by a couple of hours. So your body is much more naturally interested in going to bed at a later hour and getting up at a later hour. But starting high school in particular, or middle school at 7:30 in the morning, isn't as natural to your body as it would be if it were delayed by a few hours. And so districts across Massachusetts and across the country are kind of examining the research and thinking about what possibilities might exist to adjust start times to be more in line and aligned with the research. It is not an insignificant task. It requires a lot of study, a lot of communication, a lot of conversation, and really an examination at the local context. Because it has implications for transportation, it has implications for students who might work after school or have athletics or clubs and activities. There may be implications for younger children if start times were, for example, flip-flopped and younger students went to school earlier. There's also a childcare piece at the end of the day. There's an examination of the time of the school day that staff report to school. So all of this needs to be really examined and studied and thought about. So we're putting together an advisory committee to the school committee to take a look at it over the next year to see what it would mean for Franklin if we were to think about adjusting those school start times.
So that's maybe something students can look forward to, or when would we expect some sort of change?
That's a great question. I think it's a couple years away. There's kind of the studying, then there's the planning, and then there's the implementing. And so I think this is a really long-term prospect, and we're just getting the ball rolling with the conversation at this point in time.
Yeah, and I just, as you said, is just in no ways an insignificant issue.
Yeah, and so we'll see what the implications are for Franklin and go from there.
Interesting. This past Wednesday, we had a lot of snow, and something students always consider whenever there's even a chance of snow is whether or not we'll have school or not, and sometimes they look forward to not having school. So what sort of goes into the decision of deciding whether we have school or not?
That's a great question, and really I think what goes into the decision varies depending upon what the storm looks like. Because a couple of weeks ago we had a very definitive forecast and we knew a day or two ahead of time that we were in for a really big storm. And with the snow on Wednesday, there was a lot more uncertainty with respect to how much we were going to get and what the surrounding conditions were. For example, temperature plays a big role, wind plays a big role. So each decision has a slightly different context around which it's made. On Wednesday morning, I woke up very, very early. My goal was to wake up at 4, but I ended up waking up at 3. So I was shortchanged by about an hour worth of sleep because I was nervous about what was going to happen with the snow. I naturally want to make sure that people are safe, first and foremost. On the other hand, you're watching the forecast and you want to have school if there's not going to be a lot of snow, or sometimes the forecast can clear up suddenly. It's not a decision that I make in isolation, although I am the one responsible for making the decision. I do consult with other area superintendents, so I am part of a group that includes all of the surrounding towns and even farther of superintendents who are discussing things in the early morning to try to figure out what they're going to do. But each superintendent does need to make the decision within the context of their local district. So I also consult with our head of DPW and the director of facilities at times to call and ask about their feeling about the storm and whether or not they're going to be able to keep up with it. For example, on the previous storm that we had, there was still some very significant cleanup to do on that Friday, in part because it got so cold that salt wasn't going to work on the roads, and there was a lot of drifting of the snow because of the wind. So there was some significant cleanup still to be done. So there's consultation with other folks in order to make the decision. I am talking to the athletic director at times to understand what the implications might be not just, I don't just consider the school day, but I'm also considering what's happening after hours, including for our athletic programs. So there's a lot of things at play, a lot of variables, a lot of communication. And those are some of the thoughts that run through my mind is, do we think we can open safely? If not, would a delay be helpful? And ultimately, making a call to have no school if that's what feels like it's the right thing to do.
It sounds like a very intensive process.
It can be, but I get up early and take my time, get all the information I need.
Good thing too. How can students and parents who want to keep up with what's happening in the district learn more?
That's a great question. So I would say that there are probably 3 ways that parents and students can do that. One is every other week we have, I should say twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays we have a school committee meeting. And at the school committee meeting I do a superintendent's report, which gives the school committee and the school community an update of important things that are happening. I do type up that report and I post it the next day on the website. So that's one way, is in kind of every other week bulletin that gets posted on our website. We have started a quarterly newsletter that is coming out of central office. We sent one out in November, and we will be sending one out by the end of January for a winter edition of the newsletter, which is intended to give big picture updates about things that are happening across the district. And then the third thing I would say, although I have not been as prolific a tweeter as Franklin High School might be, we do have a Franklin Public Schools Twitter feed, and I have my own kind of personal professional Twitter feed as the superintendent, which are some other ways to keep apprised of what's happening. Those are usually, obviously, because it's on Twitter, kind of shorter feel-good stories about promoting some of the positive things that are happening across all of the schools. Those would be 3 ways that I would say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we want to thank you again for coming in today, and we wish you many more years of superintending.
Thank you.
This has been Sitting with the Superintendent.